What is up? Good evening and welcome to I forgot what show I was hosting for a second. No Punt Intended. It is not Mock It Like It's Hot. I'm used to being the Monday show. Welcome to No Punt Intended. I'm your fill-in host, Ryan Weiss, in case you haven't figured it out yet. With baseball season here, Joe Zolo is just going to be taking weeks off, so get used to my ugly mug and my terrible intros. But I promise you, it is going to be a fantastic show. We are continuing our Look Inside series, and this week we are covering really good teams for it being this early in the shows because normally it's the bad teams. We have the Indianapolis Colts, the Los Angeles Rams, and the Denver Broncos. And if you've watched this show anytime in the last 3 years, you know that if we have the Denver Broncos, we have a really great guest. Our friend Linda G is here, the queen of special teams. It is going to be a fun show, even without Joe. Make sure you stick with us, and I'm going to find the intro real quick because I have done terrible things to this intro so far. So give me 1 second now, and let's start the show.
Oh, good Lord.
An absolutely flawless intro. I don't think you could have asked for anything better. To say I wasn't prepared because we were talking about Linda just being on a binge drinking this entire weekend is it.
Way to call her out. Damn.
It feels like you were like, boy, that wasn't the smoothest. I'm going to say the worst thing I could about Linda to start the show.
Listen, ma'am, that is not the worst thing I could have said.
Yeah.
Welcome to No Pun Intended.
Let me just get this man thing out of the way before we even start the show. There's something jarring about several people. I talked to more people today. Everybody had a question for me. Too many people. People in the elevator, people redoing our air conditioners, and every single one of them called me ma'am. That's too many. All I'm saying, it was too many. One or two here or there, fine.
What's funny is I worked in customer service for many years. We have not even started the show yet. I worked in customer service for many years, and I never understood people getting mad at ma'am. It's a sign of respect. They're not calling you an old bitch, Linda. Like, what's going on with this?
Well, I would prefer that. I think I fit that moniker a little bit better, but it's not an offensive thing. It was just too many times today. I was like, I am younger than you. Like, God damn it.
Well, okay. You're going to get it a lot from me because you're taller. I have to show you respect as the show is going.
Then I prefer it.
Welcome to No Punt Intended, folks. The show is off the rails. My intro was absolute trash. Joe would give me a hard time, but we both know he's not going to watch the intro, so none of it matters at this point. With me, as always, Joshua Hudson, who is really regretting letting me do the intro at this point. I promise you, I have the best of intentions, Josh.
You know what? Linda's on the show. That's all that matters, and it's going to be a great one all the way around. I texted her asking her if she wanted to be on. She's like, "Wait, you want to bring me on to talk Jelani Woods? You want to have me talk about the Broncos and an Oklahoma State kicker? Bring it!"
I was going to say, I think this all worked out well. And Josh, you did such a great job catering the show sheet to our guest as you've done, really since this show last year, you had started doing that. And I think it's going to be a great one with Linda. First and foremost, I like to do things a little bit differently than Joe. I like to let our guest intro themselves right off the rip. So Linda, for those who do not know you, please let them know who you are, where you work, and what you work on.
Who I am is an existential crisis right now. So we won't dive fully into that. But you can find everything in season. Once redraft really ramps up, it'll be at Fantasy Life newsletter. And then I'm doing a full season kicker ranking, the reception perception rookie guide, which I did for them last year. It was pretty fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Linda is the OG when it comes to kicker rankings, and she works with the best in the business because she is the best in the business. We love having her on. It's going to be a really fun show. It is a shame that Joe's not here to be super mean to Linda, but me and Josh will do our best to keep the feistiness going.
You are knocking it out of the park. Much better than your intro.
There we go. Yes. It couldn't possibly be worse than the intro. Guys, we are getting started with the Indianapolis Colts. Last year, they went 4-12-1, a wonderful tie. They have a new coach this year. It's Shane Steichen. He will be calling the plays with the one and only Jim Bob Cooter as the offensive coordinator. their projected starting offense is going to be Anthony Richardson at quarterback, though there is some debate about that, and I would love to see Gardner Minshew. RB1 is Jonathan Taylor. Backing him up is going to be Zach Moss. Wide receiver 1, Michael Pittman. Wide receiver 2, Alec Pierce. Wide receiver 3, rookie Josh Downs. Tight end 1, Linda's know all about it, Jelani Woods. And tight end 2, Kylan Granson. And we start off with the section we're just calling our guys. And we're going to give everybody time to talk about their favorite players. Josh, you have Michael Pittman. I have Jonathan Taylor, and Linda has Jelani Woods with a honorable mention. So Josh, get us started. What are you liking about Michael Pittman going into the season?
I just didn't want to double down on Jonathan Taylor because I knew you would. And let's be honest, Jonathan Taylor is really the one person from this offense that you want the most out of anybody. But I think there's a very compelling case for Michael Pittman. When I was going through and doing my Colts projections and really kind of looking at this offense more in depth, there's like with a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, they're not going to throw the football a lot. You really cannot see it. Redshirt sophomores that come into the league that get asked to start right away do not throw the football a ton. So that's like that's number 1 point right there. So when it comes to that, you want the player that they're going to hyper target. This offense last year in Philadelphia, they threw 27% of the pass attempts to A.J. Brown. They had a really good number 2 wide receiver who saw a healthy target share as well. You look at this Colts offense, who do they truly have opposite Michael Pittman?
Yeah, there is no wide receiver.
Realistically, he could see 32% target share in this offense when you really break it down. Like, you want to funnel this offense, make it a 1 read and go. So that way Anthony Richardson doesn't have to make massive decisions. If that 1 read is going to be Michael Pittman, sign me the hell up. Because right there, he's a wide receiver 2 just based on target distribution. And that's not even factoring in potential touchdowns.
Linda, you have warm and fuzzies for Michael Pittman. You think it's going to be all that?
I do have warm and fuzzies for Michael Pittman, but I always have. I just think I agree with everything Josh said. I think a lot of that offense is going to go through him. A lot of that passing offense is going to go through him, and he'll be the first look all season. So that interests me.
My only concern, and Josh, you kind of said, he could be, 32% target share, something along those lines. It's going to come down to passing attempts, but he had, I think it was 140 targets last year, caught 99 of them, and still in PPR was only the wide receiver 20. So we're going to need to see a lot more touchdowns for him to make a leap. I think he's a very safe wide receiver too, and I like him as a wide receiver too. I would like to see more out of him, and maybe with Richardson in year 2, we're going to see it, but I just don't know about in year 1.
Well, I think you're also factoring in the criminally low yards per reception that Michael Pittman had last year, which really was an outlier when you look at what he did his first couple of years. He was well over 12 yards per reception year 1 and year 2. Last year, that dipped below 10 because Matt Ryan and whatever else they threw out at quarterback just absolutely sucked. Anthony Richardson led all of NCAA last year in yards per pass attempt. He looks to throw down the field. That's going to benefit Michael Pittman in this offense.
So do you think we'll see more of a 2021 Eagles offense where they're going to limit him, or do you think we'll open it up like we already did in 2022?
Oh, no, they're not at 2022 yet. Absolutely not. You can't do that with Anthony Richardson and 13 career college starts. No fucking way. Well, absolutely not. I have this offense pegged for 25 pass attempts per game.
Yeah. For my guy, I went Jonathan Taylor. Because, as Josh mentioned, he is my guy, plain and simple. One thing I found interesting when I was digging into Jonathan Taylor is everybody who's anybody will tell you how bad of a season it was for Jonathan Taylor last year. And I'm not even going to deny that, especially for a guy who was a lot of people's number 1 pick overall. However, if you blanket asked people, what kind of season did Jamal Williams have last year? 18 touchdowns. Most people are going to say it was a pretty damn good season. They averaged the same fantasy points per game, 13.3 fantasy points per game. So Jonathan Taylor maybe didn't pay off as the number 1 pick, but I do think you could see a wonderful bounce back this year. We saw the touchdowns plummet. And I think that was the big issue that we ran into with Taylor, is on top of the injury. Obviously, he just didn't score the touchdowns he scored back in 2021 to kind of lead him to this great season. And I think, honestly, that's something we're going to see more out of. Obviously, you're going to deal with Anthony Richardson running the football, but they're also not going to want him throwing in the red zone a lot. And so if it's not him running, it's going to be Taylor running. And I think he's in for a bounce back. The real question I would ask you, Linda, to get started is Jonathan Taylor a first-round pick in redraft this year, or should we see him starting to fall to the second round, which is what I'm seeing in a lot of mock drafts?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him fall with a down year, quote unquote, however you want to argue that, but a down year and a quarterback that just came in that everybody's talking about, this athletic freak, and he's huge and he runs and he does everything and he's freaking Iron Man. You know, I could see people souring on Jonathan Taylor. In the case, I'll have some Jonathan Taylor because I think he's a very good runner. As of to this year, I have not had hardly any, if any at all, because I tend to go CMC or no running back. But I think if he falls some this year to the second, you got to jump all over that.
And that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And it actually harkens back leading into that 2021 year, Josh, because I was a person who was high on Taylor before he kind of blew up. And I was taking Travis Kelce in round 1, Jonathan Taylor in round 2. If I can get back to doing that, you know damn well that's how I'm going to start every single draft this season.
Yeah, that's kind of what you're looking at here with Taylor, right? Like he's been the overall RB1, then he goes and gets hurt, then he plummets down the rankings. It's a tale as old as time. We saw the same shit with Christian McCaffrey, and he ended up as RB2 last year when everybody was fading him because of 2 straight years of injuries. At the end of the day, talent's talent. But I do want to point out something that one of our recent Look Inside articles this year that Austin wrote up about Jonathan Taylor and how running backs can or are not affected by quarterbacks who predominantly carry the football. And you look at guys like a Miles Sanders last year with Jalen Hurts. You look at all the different running backs, Devin Singletary, for instance, that have worked within Josh Allen's system, Dobbins and Mark Ingram and so forth with Lamar Jackson. At the end of the day, talent is what stands out. Steichen knows how to incorporate running football into his offense. They did it extremely well with Philly last year. I understand that this Colts offense is not the Eagles offense. Very few offenses are and or will be. But Richardson's effectiveness with the football in his hands is only going to make life easier for Jonathan Taylor. And oh, by the way, Jonathan Taylor is a really damn good running back. Yeah. So if he can score 18 touchdowns on his own, how do you think it's going to be inflated with the assist of someone like an Anthony Richardson as a threat next to him in that offense?
It almost feels like Jonathan Taylor is going to fall into a role where it's Nick Chubb-esque, where he may not be a prolific pass catcher, and that's going to start to just kill his ADP every year. But for people like me, I'm just going to keep jumping on it.
I was going to say, if he runs for 1,500 yards and 10 plus touchdowns, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Really
Millie Mills asks a great question. Should he draft Taylor over Bijan Robinson? And rather than just answering that question, I think we're going to go ahead and play Joe's favorite game, because the ADP
we have
Taylor,
to. I mean,
is very interesting.
Joe's not here, so we got to rub it in.
There you go. Bijan is going number 4 with the 9th overall pick. Taylor's going number 5. So I'm going to go up to 3 and then work backwards a little bit. So let's start with Saquon Barkley or Jonathan Taylor. Linda, who are you taking if you have to choose?
Jonathan Taylor.
Josh?
Probably Taylor over Saquon, yeah.
It's Taylor for me as well. Then going forth is the man, the myth, the legend, who has not played it down yet, Bijan Robinson or Jonathan Taylor. Linda?
Bijan Robinson.
It's Bijan for me as well, Josh.
It's really hard to ignore the potential of that offense, even though
really
they do have a really good number 2 there with Tyler Algier, and God only knows how Arthur Smith will find new ways to fuck over fantasy managers. But it's Bijan. The passing upside on top of the rushing upside in that offense, to the fucking moon.
There was a quote today that they're going to use Bijan in a hybrid Cordero Patterson role. My concern is they just weren't throwing the ball to Cordero Patterson over the last 2 years. So Bijan Robinson might just be in the same exact role as Jonathan Taylor. This one's interesting. At 6, but 5 picks later, Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Taylor, Linda?
Jonathan Taylor.
Jacobs was the RB3 last year, Josh. RB2.
Yeah, I love me some Josh Jacobs, but let me tell you,
who's the Raiders'
the
quarterback?
amount of touches that he had last year are very worrisome. My first round of projections, I do have Jacobs over Taylor, but I think really all that tells me is that I'm going to bypass Jacobs and take the better value in Taylor.
So I want to go back to Linda's question. Who is the Raiders quarterback? Because that's an interesting situation going on right there. And does that affect you at all, Josh? If it comes out that Jimmy Garoppolo is gone and this is, Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell's team, is that going to kill Josh Jacobs for you?
No, it really isn't, because that offense is Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs. It doesn't matter. So, and when it boils down to that, you have Devontae Adams that can take pressure off of defenses, which helps Josh Jacobs. Pittman isn't on the level of a Devontae Adams. So I think that with the way the defenses can play the Colts, it's going to affect Taylor more than it would affect like Jacobs in that offense.
That's fair. And then the last one is a guy we've mentioned, and I think it's very interesting because he is continually underrated in fantasy football, but it's Nick Chubb or Jonathan Taylor. Now, in defense of fantasy managers, you really don't need to make this decision. Taylor's going at 10 and Chubb's going at 16. And if you're stuck at the 10th pick, it's a hell of a turn to walk out with Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb, Linda. But if you had to choose between the two, are you taking Mr. 5.1 yards per carry, Nick Chubb, or are you sticking with JT?
I'm sticking with JT. I'll just go a little earlier.
Yeah. Josh?
I'm going Nick Chubb here. Nick Chubb is in for a career year this year in Cleveland. I'm all the way in on Nick Chubb.
I'm shocked to hear you say that. I'm big Nick Chubb guy, and I'll even be honest, I just updated my projections. Nick Chubb is 8 points ahead of Jonathan Taylor. I'm still taking Jonathan Taylor. I love the man way too much. So
I have Chubb almost 30 points ahead. So
yeah. I'd rather be wrong with Jonathan Taylor on my team. And then, Linda, you have Jelani Woods. And when I had to do my little quick write-ups of the Indianapolis Colts, I didn't even list Woods. I listed the tight end room because, my goodness, do they just keep adding to the tight end room. Are you confident this is Jelani Woods' team? He's going to be the starter?
What am I not confident? And B, I saw exactly one report that the plan was to get Jelani Woods working in this offense, and that's
all you needed.
Fucking needed. I'm in. It doesn't matter. All tight ends are bad. Pick one. That's my guy. This year it's Jelani Woods. He's 6'7". If Michael Pittman's not open, Jelani Woods is out there. Chuck it up to him. He will come down with it. His yards after the catch has been great. He was so fun to watch last year when he got to shine. That he's just a monster. He's just a monster.
Jelani Woods has that feeling, Josh, of what we call in fantasy a post-hype sleeper, because Jelani Woods was a favorite by many, especially in the dynasty community, ending up on the Colts last year, but didn't do a whole lot. However,
he did enough to make us salivate and get us hyped for this year.
What I enjoyed when I was looking at the stats, to Linda's point to both of your points, that he did enough and it was nice. He was tied for the team lead at tight end in targets and tied for touchdowns. If they're ready to elevate him, and we all know rookie tight ends struggle going into the second year, if they're ready to elevate him and he cuts into everybody else's work, that's enough, really.
Well, I know Linda can better answer this point than I can, but wasn't Jelani Woods like a quarterback like 3 years ago? Isn't he fairly new to like being a tight end?
But yeah. He started at quarterback, and then he moved to at Oklahoma State, and then Mike Gundy refused to use him appropriately, so he left to Virginia Tech, where he did great things and went on to get drafted. And I'm still mad at Mike Gundy.
Hold the fuck on. You are telling me that a man who goes 6'7", 253 was a quarterback?
I'm pretty sure he wasn't 260 or 270
in
or whatever
high school, bro.
Then,
and then in college, they were like, yeah, no.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Because I'm getting like wet dreams of Dante
People just saw a 6'7" kid in high school and were like, I'm putting him on the team. I'll figure it out afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. So clearly he's probably just the best player on any team he was on up to that point. But the quarterback thing, that definitely threw me off.
Yeah, my thing with Woods, especially in this offense, and just kind of, looking back at what Philly's done over the last couple of years and how they've used the tight end, Dallas Goedert's one of the best two-way tight ends. He can block and he can, catch the football. Jelani Woods can catch the football. Blocking is something that I don't really think that he's great at, but if he can be serviceable as they look to continue to rebuild that offensive line in Indy, because they've been ravished with injuries the last couple of years, I think there's a lot of room for him because he'll earn the playing time that way. They did bring back Mo Alley Cox, and that's kind of the guy that they've used in the blocking formations. But if they're able to just trot out Woods as the starter, that to me is going to be more of an indicator that, all right, there's something to work with here as an offensive weapon for fantasy managers.
I like it. I mean, and we've seen an Eagles offense, maybe not under Steichen so much where two tight ends mattered. But we've seen Eagles offenses where the two tight ends mattered. So even if you brought up, Mo Alley Cox is out there to blocking, if they split Woods out and he's not necessarily like a slot wide receiver, but still he's a better pass catcher than probably who they would have in the slot.
I had to Google it because I wanted to know. Played quarterback and passed for almost 2,000 yards with 20 touchdowns and 6 interceptions his junior season in Georgia.
It's a high school football state. I love it.
Yeah, I had to look.
I like it. Like I said, I had no idea. I'm a big Logan Thomas guy, a converted quarterback to tight end, though he did it a lot later because he tried to do it in the NFL. Well, it would not be a show with Linda if we didn't talk kickers. And so that is how we are going to end each segment. And Linda, I'm just keeping it very open-ended for you. Break down the kicker situation in Indy because it changed a little bit.
I cannot be like, you gave me 3 perfect teams. Every team has a different situation going on at kicker, which is so fun for me. But the Colts signed Matt Gay, a free agent, the Super Bowl winning Matt Gay, 4-year contract, and it was the biggest contract in kicker contract in free agent history.
It was like the second after the Rams cut him too, didn't they?
Oh yeah, it's fast. It was the reason I had to start. Like, I keep track of everything, and it's impossible because nobody reports on kickers.
Yeah.
So I have to just Google a ton and like Twitter, but I try to track everything. And as soon as that happened, I was like, boy, better get that up and running. So
yeah, if there's one thing you're not allowed to be behind on, it's kicker news. That's your whole reputation. Like it can't happen. So
I know. I made sure to check everything before we logged on tonight to make sure that I was given up-to-date information because people are listening. They care.
I love it. Matt Gay, perennially a top 10 kicker with a rookie quarterback. Does that help him, hurt him? What are your thoughts on Matt Gay for fantasy this season?
Oh, he'll probably be fine. The Colts kicked a lot last season, but they couldn't get anything going on offense. It was kind of like the Broncos recipe for points where it was just like, ugh. Okay. And I don't think it's going to be as blecky this year, but I don't know. I still haven't looked at like strength of schedule and stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a pretty similar output to last season.
Okay. So there you have it. We did still have Joe fill in the show sheet, so he's not here to defend himself. His sleeper is nobody. He says just don't do it. But he did kind of throw in Alec Pierce at the very end there. And we've had a little Alec Pierce talk in the chat. He is likely to start opposite Michael Pittman, so it's not the worst pick in the world grabbing a second wide receiver on a team. You just got to see how much they're going to throw the ball. And his IDP player of note is Zaire Franklin. We're going to move on to Linda's Denver Broncos. Last year, in case you were under a rock, very, very bad year for the Denver Broncos. They went 5-12. They have now replaced their coach. They have Sean Payton, formerly of the New Orleans Saints. He will be calling the plays, but Joe Lombardi is once again his offensive coordinator. Their projected starting offense is a lot of really good names. Russell Wilson at quarterback, Javonte Williams at running back, along with Samaje Perine coming over from Cincinnati. Jerry Jeudy is the wide receiver 1A. Cortland Sutton is the B. Rookie Marvin Mims, probably the wide receiver 3. And then Tim Patrick, the wide receiver 4. With Greg Dulcich projected to be the starter at tight end, though. Albert Okwebunam is still there. We're going to start with Josh as my guy again. I'm going to let you go, Josh, on Samaje Perine.
Yeah, for me, I feel like he's the only one that actually has a defined job. Like, we talk about this wide receiver room. Who's the wide receiver 1? Who's the 2? Who's the 3? Everybody likes Jerry Jeudy. We all know how much I love Cortland Sutton. Marvin Mims was the handpicked guy for Sean Payton. Maybe he ends up there. Maybe they end up trading a wide receiver, and that opens up room for Tim Patrick. I have no idea how the targets are going to shake out amongst this wide receiver core. But one thing I do know is that Sean Payton loves throwing to running backs. And right now, that running back of choice is Samaje Perine. And we've talked all the time about how valuable targets are in terms versus carries for running backs. So give me the guy that's going to see the targets. I want Samaje Perine, and he's a hell of a lot cheaper than Javonte Williams, who has major questions around that reconstructed knee, who went through similar issues with his knee that J.K. Dobbins went through, and we saw what happened with him last year.
So, Josh, you immediately went the other way from me from the blurb I wrote this morning. I looked at what Javonte Williams did last year in that one great game with his 10 receptions, and I thought maybe we see Williams in the pass-catching role with Perine in the carries, and you just don't see it shaking out that way?
Perine's not a featured back by any means. Javonte Williams has that skill set that he can be the early down hammer. He doesn't have a strong profile. He doesn't have a blazing 40 time or anything like that, but he's a grinder and he can pick up those yards. But again, after tearing every imaginable ligament in his knee, everything says that he's on track to be ready. Like, when I did my projections, I was like, I'm writing in 200 carries and I'm like vomiting in my mouth because I don't like it at all. Like, I don't see him getting 200 carries. But when I'm looking at the rest of the depth chart at running back, I don't see anybody else that's seeing 200 carries in this offense. So I wouldn't be shocked if the guy that leads this team in carries isn't even on the team right now. But I know who will at least be second, and that's Perine.
I was shocked they didn't immediately bring Latavius Murray back because of his history with Sean Payton. I thought that we could see that happen pretty quick.
I mean, I don't think he makes it out of training camp with Buffalo, so I think he could very well be the option for Denver.
There you go. Linda, before I have you surprise us with your guy, because you did not fill in the show sheet, I just want to ask you the
I made a copy because I had to add a lot of notes. And I didn't want to get in the way of your notes.
You're absolutely fine. I'm just giving you a hard time because it's what I do.
But
my first question to you is, unless he happens to be your guy, is Russell Wilson going to be better in 2022? I don't know of a human being who was more happy when Russell Wilson became a Denver Bronco and then probably more sad 4 months later.
Do you know that this is like the third offseason in a row? Well, this being the third one, but I did 2 off seasons. One where I was sure we were getting Aaron Rodgers, and then that didn't happen, and I was like, and then we traded for Russell Wilson, and I was back. I'm like, playoff bound, we're good, we're back in like double-digit wins, crushing it, and then for like last season to happen,
yeah,
I don't know. When I first saw my guy for the Denver Broncos, I was like, I don't have one. And I've always been in on Cortland Sutton year after year after year, and it hasn't paid off. I don't think it's going to pay off. I think Sean Payton is probably reworking that whole offense. So for me, first of all, I agree with Josh. I think Samaje Perine is going incredibly late in drafts. Love him in best ball where you like don't have to make the decision, you know. But he's going so late that I think he's a fine dart throw. Marvin Mims is the other guy that I'm throwing a dart at because he's not going to go as high as Jerry Jeudy. Now, he might be going higher than Cortland Sutton, but I think he's a dart throw that you can. Is he not? Because that would be awesome. If
go ahead. I'm going to go look. Honest, I know you made me think about it.
I don't know how that ADP shakes out with the 4. I know Tim Patrick is probably going last, but I think Marvin Mims, like Josh, you said, there's so many question marks, and I think it's okay to like kind of target that uncertainty sometimes if you can get it late enough in a draft. If Marvin Mims is going at a value where he's, tell me right now.
Yeah, I just love that you're saying this because perception and reality are very different here. So you, as a Broncos fan who knows what the hell you're talking about, likes Mims as much as Sutton. Sutton is going off the board as the wide receiver 37. Marvin Mims is the wide receiver 85. There is no real ADP for Marvin Mims. Jesus. And then Tim Patrick is like 97, 12 picks later, or 12 wide receivers later. So
yeah,
Mims
I'd rather
and Patrick are essentially free.
A final draft dart at Marvin Mims for like a bench wide receiver and see if that works out. But there's been some, there's been talk about Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy on their way out of the Broncos via trade. So I just think I think Sean Payton's kind of done with that, watching that experiment. So I can't imagine he's thrilled to like get his hands on it.
So who is your guy? I don't know if you've even mentioned it yet. Okay, it is Mims. Okay.
Sorry.
No. You led into it perfectly. You segued so well, I didn't even catch it. So, no, you're not the first guest to be in on Mims. I believe was it Julia Papworth with us, Josh? Who was
Julia loves high. Mims, and I know Melina is a big Marvin Mims guy too. Him being an Oklahoma Sooners fan. So
yeah, it hurts for me to say that. I'm just throwing Big 12 guys out at you right now.
No, it's interesting. Most interesting is that every smart person we've spoke to likes Mims more than Sutton, and we're talking a 50-point discrepancy in their ADP. While you could certainly argue for days that Mims should be higher, and Linda, you kind of hit it on the head. There's no better last pick in fantasy football right now than Marvin Mims. It also means Sutton is going way too high, and I don't know if we're betting on the trade like just happening or what. But consensus seems to be, Josh, that Sutton is the odd man out on this offense.
It's disappointing because I too am a huge Courtland
Sutton you are
fan. Not the biggest Jerry Jeudy fan.
Me either.
And I know that you talked about, who ends up as the Michael Thomas in this offense. Remember that there was no Michael Thomas in the Sean Payton offense before Michael Thomas even got there. Very fair. They spread the football around quite a bit. So it wouldn't surprise me if
we go back to that,
if Jeudy, Sutton, and Mims all have 100 targets and that's it.
And that makes Greg Dulcich completely unavailable, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. So, it's one of those things where one of these wide receivers needs to falter for Dulcich to be a thing. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, then you can cross off Dulcich from your sleeper tight end pantheon.
So I want to hit on that. So my guy is Jerry Jeudy, and I'll talk about in a second. Josh, you've kind of already alluded to it because you read my little blurb on him this morning. So my guy is Jerry Jeudy, but the Dulcich thing is interesting because I just wrote an article 10 days ago defending Dulcich as a tight end sleeper. However, Sean Payton has come out and said he has learning to do and growth to do to be the guy in this offense. Our good buddy Joel Wirth believes that Albert Okwebunam could have a bigger role as a more athletic tight end, and we've kind of all written him off, but that was under the previous coaching staff. I love the opportunity of what Dulcich could be, but that job is not his, and you have to pay attention to that for a long while heading into this preseason, that he's won it before that could be your sleeper. For me, it's Jeudy simply because we saw a different Jerry Jeudy last year. We saw 14.1 yards per reception, and that's not quite the role we were expecting from him. That's more the role we expected from Courtland Sutton. But even still, Jerry Jeudy scored 6 touchdowns. He had fewer targets than Sutton, but outscored him by many fantasy points. If that is the role that Sean Payton, it's a big if. A lot is hanging on that if. Jeudy was already the wide receiver 22 last year, and I don't see him. It was on 100 targets. I don't see him falling much below that, even if he doesn't get the Michael Thomas role. But if he does get the Michael Thomas role, the upside on Jerry Jeudy is insane, plain and simple.
But in reality, you can say that about any of the wide receivers.
Oh, 100%. I just think Jeudy is the most talented of the bunch. So if that role is going to be available, I think it goes to Jeudy.
What's Judy's ADP? I'm sorry. Do you still?
Oh no, that's a great question. I honestly haven't looked at it yet.
Because if they're both going,
no, Judy's going. Well,
I know Judy's going.
Judy's at 29.
Yeah,
only 8 picks.
Throw a dart at whichever one of those you want, because as long as if they can start on your bench, if you've got your starters taken care of and you want to throw a dart in the Broncos offense, that uncertainty is like the key. You could hit and be the genius, that's the perfect, like, I know we tend to shy away from uncertainty like that in those situations, but because it could be such a payoff and nobody knows, I think it's worth it, whichever one you like.
And that's something that Coop brought up on last week's show when we
Josh,
were talking about the Carolina Panthers wide receiver room and how uncertain that is. The same logic applies to Denver.
Yeah.
Just you have more talent in Denver. That's all.
I think the long and short of it
is in your room. I'm sure Coop is in my brain with that. I'm sure I heard him say it, and I was like, fucking excellent point, bro.
Well, and that's a really good point, though. But first and foremost, if you hear two smart people say something, listen. But way more importantly, I think the biggest takeaway from this, and we're going to get to Millie's question here before we get to Linda's kicker. The biggest takeaway from this really needs to be Marvin Mims needs way more respect in fantasy drafts because, Josh, you hit nail one on the head. He is the first wide receiver hand selected by this regime. They went in the second round with their own first pick of the draft and said, we want Marvin Mims, and got him. I think that needs to be considered when you're looking at this wide receiver room. Maybe the trade hasn't happened yet. That doesn't mean the trade's not going to happen. So I think it's going to be very interesting. And as Coop said last week, find the chaos, take the cheapest guy. So, all right, before we get into the rest of it, I think this is a great question, and you guys have both kind of like tiptoed around it, but let's put you on the spot. Are we sold on Sean Payton? Takes a year off, he comes back. Linda, you're the Broncos fan. Are you happy Sean Payton is your head coach?
What other choice do I have? I'm a delusional sports fan. Like, even at first, if I was like, at first, I talk myself into whatever it is. Here's what I want Sean Payton. I'm a little concerned with the need to bring every person he's ever talked to on the coaching staff or onto the team. Like, it feels like everybody we sign is like former Saint, and you're like, we get it.
Yeah.
Like, I know where you coached before this. So that's concern to me. But I have to talk myself into it. I have to believe that he can make Russell Wilson share the locker room with the rest of the team. I have to believe that he can, get him back on track, because what other choice do I have?
And what other choice does Russ have, Josh?
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's true. And there's always a big to-do about the contract that Russ has, which is astronomical.
Yeah.
But even if they try to move on, they can do so as early as next year. Like, this really is a trial run for Russell with the Broncos right now. Last year, epic failure. Nathaniel Hackett, pun intended, couldn't hack it. Like, it is what it is. It didn't work.
What this shit is called, Josh.
Yeah, Josh.
couldn't make it work. The offense in general was just awful. The defense did everything possible to make this team a winner, and even they couldn't do it, and they were a damn good defense.
Yeah.
So this job right here for Sean Payton, what he has to focus on this year, can Russ do it? And if Russ can't do it, we're going to get our guy for 2024. And I don't know who that guy's going to be. Maybe it's another veteran. Maybe they find a dart throw, because I don't think they have their first round pick next year. Do they? Linda, do you know?
I do not look that far in the future.
Yeah, nor I.
You got me fucked up.
So,
someone in the chat will let us know.
So, like, but that's kind of the point. Like, they're going to be in a position to move on if it doesn't work with Russ and Payton. And I know everybody wants to throw all these comparisons that, oh, well, Drew Brees was this height and Russ isn't much different. Sean Payton succeeded with Brees, so it'll work with Russ. And that's not how logic works, people. It just
tread lightly, because that was the crux of Roxanne's article.
Fair enough. But still, like, that's just not how it works. Like, Payton can put together a good scheme. It's still up to Russ to implement that scheme.
100%.
And, for everything great that he did in Seattle, it didn't work last year in a different offense. Now he gets a second go around in another different offense. So again, there's hope and there's weapons there. There is talent on this offense. We've seen Sean Payton's offenses do really well. They just need a good quarterback. And we need to figure out right now if Russ still is a good quarterback.
for my quick 2 cents, the long and short is I think Russ experienced being a superstar for the first time last year with the whole offseason and the let's ride and the big trucks and all that shit. And then we saw that of the weight he put on. Honestly, I think he got complacent last year. I think we're already seeing improvement on that complacency. And I think Sean Payton's probably a part of that. Sean Payton knows firsthand what it takes to succeed. Russell Wilson left a coach who knew. He's now with a coach he knew. Nathaniel Hackett never knew. So I think whether you believe in Payton or not, and I don't know how much better it's going to make the Broncos as a football team, and Linda's hit a really good point, like he just keeps bringing recycled names over. I do think it's going to make Russell Wilson a better quarterback, at least in 2023. As we move on, Linda, let's talk about the kickers. Another situation that just changed this offseason. Brandon McManus given his walking papers. Who is the Denver Broncos kicker?
Today they signed Elliott Fry, who was went undrafted in 2010. He's played 3 games. He's 5 of 6 on field goals, 6 of 7 on extra points. And he didn't play at all last year. He played 1 game for Atlanta in 2020, 1 game for Kansas City in 2021.
I was going to say, I thought it was the Chiefs.
Yeah, 1 game for the Bengals in 2021.
I didn't know the Bengals. He's bounced around a bit.
He's been on 10 teams since 2017. Mm-hmm.
Oof.
That's what you want out of a kicker.
Yeah. We got rid of Brandon McManus. At least he
racked up those miles, man. You know, he can afford to move up into first class to stretch the leg a little.
I have to believe that they're going to bring somebody else in for a competition, whether it's a rookie. I mean, there's several teams right now that have more than 1 kicker on the roster because they're going to go through camp as a competition. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's a revolving door a little while. But that's what I mean, you know.
And that's one
when your coach needs you to make a 64-yard field goal and you can't do it, you get cut, bro. Exactly. That's the way it goes.
Especially in Denver. Those are easy in Denver, right? Those are 30-yard field goals.
Those are chip shots.
Was that game a home game where he was a fucking asshole to Brandon?
I think it was. Joe Sleeper is, first of all, I knew exactly who Joe's 2 players were before I ever opened the show sheet. Joe Sleeper is Tim Patrick, as he would mention. I am relatively sure for as long as we've done this show, Josh, Tim Patrick has been Joe Sleeper. Like, it just pencil it in.
Yep.
And then I knew his IDP player would be Alex Singleton, because if you let Joe tell it, Joe discovered Alex Singleton. Alex Singleton is only a person who anyone has ever heard of because of Joe Zolo, and he'll never let you forget it. He was one of a very few rankers who had Alex Singleton in his top 10 last year. Joe is very proud of that fact, and Joe will take all the credit for all of Alex Singleton's success.
You know,
I will.
I mean, I do that shit where you're like, I heard that band first, so I like them better or whatever.
100%.
I do that.
I'll tell you mine. Mine became a very famous player, but Jimmy Graham. So Jimmy Graham was a relatively unknown player when he ended up in New Orleans behind Jeremy Shockey, and then started the last 2 games of that season. And I publicly told anybody, I'm like, this kid, Jimmy Graham, this kid, don't let me get him in drafts next year. And he blew the fuck up. I have so much love in my heart for Jimmy Graham because I feel like I discovered him. So,
dude, if it works out for Jelani Woods, last offseason when everybody was like, oh, who is this monster? And I was like, I've been talking to him for 3 years. Get in line.
He's a high school quarterback.
That's my underground band, bitch.
I love it. I love it. Well, we go from the fun of the Denver Broncos to the not very fun Los Angeles Rams. It was a putrid season where everybody was hurt and nobody was playing football. The Rams went 5-12. McVay flirted with retirement. He is still the head coach. He is the play caller, but they bring Mike LaFleur over from the Jets to be the offensive coordinator, which Josh 100% predicted in an article earlier this offseason. Starting offense is hopefully going to be Matthew Stafford. At RB1, probably Cam Akers. RB2 is Kieran Williams, rookie from last year. Wide receiver 1, Cooper Kupp. Wide receiver 2, Van Jefferson, after they sent why am I blanking on his name right now?
Allen Robinson. And
Allen Robinson. They sent him back into the Steelers. Wide receiver 3, Tutu Atwell. Yes. Wide receiver 4, rookie, is it Puka Nacua, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And tight end 1, Tyler Higbee. Linda, I have not let you get started yet. Who is your guy for the very, very bad Los Angeles Rams. Aren't you glad I gave you this honor?
Yeah, hell yeah, because Josh wrote it should be Cooper Kupp, and mine says it's Cooper Kupp. I'm not.
I love when guests follow directions.
That's the answer. You couldn't pay me to draft Tutu Atwell, I don't think.
No.
I'm like all the way out on Atwell.
Josh knows how I feel about.
I don't want a tight end there. I don't know that Matthew Stafford's back's in one piece. I'm just glad Sean McVay is still going to be on my TV.
Linda, you actually gave me a philosophy that I have started to live by for the last 2 to 3 seasons now. And you probably don't even remember sending this tweet, but it has stuck with me. And if anyone has never met Linda in real life, this is a part of her personality. But she straight up said, if I'm taller than a wide receiver, I'm not drafting him. And my God, do I feel that exact same way. So fuck Tutu Atwell. I want nothing to do with this man. But you said that a few years ago, and it stuck with me because I'm like, that's some real shit right there.
I stand by that.
And so
if that's so short, it's a discussion. Red flag.
And Josh was a witness to my debate this year because I had the 6th or 7th pick in a draft, and it came down to me having to choose between Zay Flowers or any other human being on the planet. And I'm not taking Zay Flowers, 5'9" ass. And Josh said, you know what? Dalton Kincaid is 6'4". And I said, you're goddamn right he is. And that's who I took because I'm a heightist.
I have to look up to that motherfucker.
Exactly. No, I absolutely love it. What is there to say about Cooper Kupp? I guess the best question for you, Linda, with him being your guy and Josh's guy and arguably my guy, does it matter if Matthew Stafford's not back to 100%? The assumption is Cooper Kupp's back to 100%. They don't have much quarterback behind that. I believe Stetson Bennett is the backup at this point because I don't even think Wolford's on roster. Not that you want John Wolford as your quarterback either. So what is this offense if Matt Stafford's not 100%? Are we worried about Cooper Kupp?
Cooper Kupp was kicking ass before Matt Stafford even made it onto the roster. So I'm not terribly worried about it. Stetson Bennett's been around the globe or moon or whatever the saying is like 100 times. So he should be fine. I think he can manage a game fine.
He's the oldest rookie in NFL history. Don't you know that?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not talking about old people today because I got yelled out when I said I felt like I was old. So I'm just going to.
Oh, I mean, Stetson Bennett might be the only player in the NFL older than me at this point. So.
But I'm not worried about Cooper Kupp at all.
Okay.
Like if your competition is Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson, and God love Van Jefferson, I'm sure people are going to have him as a sleeper. It's not it for me.
I'm taking dart throws on him at the end of drafts, but I agree completely. Josh, do you share the same sentiment? No worries about Cooper Kupp regardless of the quarterback?
Cooper Kupp is going to see 80% of the targets in this offense. I mean, it's
good Lord. That's not even hyperbole.
It really isn't. I mean, it's Cooper Kupp and it's Tyler Higbee in the passing game. And Tyler Higbee, we talked about this last week.
Bricks for hands.
I mean, my God.
And was a cut candidate for a while.
I've never in my life seen a guy at tight end with over 100 targets that I didn't want to start on a week-to-week basis. Yeah. Like, it was that bad for Tyler Higbee. So if that tells you anything, it's go draft Cooper Kupp. And wherever he's being drafted right now, it is way too late. He should be at worst the 4th wide receiver off the board.
People are going to be like, oh, they'll double team him. Like they didn't double team him their entire Super Bowl
run. They put 11 guys in the box, and Cooper Kupp still managed to catch the football. That's all he does.
To Josh's point, he is the 4th wide receiver off the board right now. So
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Behind
every draft that I've done, he's gone way later than that.
Who is it?
He's going behind Jefferson, Chase, and Tyreek Hill. I don't know that I would take Hill over him. I don't know that I would take Chase over him, but I get it. So,
right. I agree with Ryan on that one.
Hard to back off rather of Justin Jefferson.
It's just that
he's in that spot.
So. And it doesn't have anything to do with Chase and Hill. It's just that their wide receiver 2s significantly. They would be wide receiver 1s if they were on the fucking Rams. I mean, so much better.
Yeah,
it's that well, and
very different than what Cooper Kupp's competition is.
Yeah, I mean, even if you move from Stafford to Stetson Bennett, the only thing that really hurts Kupp potentially is inaccurate targets. Like, he's still going to get the targets, just the quality of them's not going to be as great. So and that's just an assumption. I mean, Stetson Bennett did pretty well at Georgia. Like, I mean, I think that the reason that Sean McVay went out and got him is because he's a smart quarterback.
And let's not forget,
because he's older than him.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
He wanted somebody.
He had to respect his elders.
He wanted someone Matt Stafford could look up to in the locker room. But let's not forget, Peyton let Baker Mayfield walk, but got a good game or two out of Mayfield last year. Like, Peyton is the guy you want Stetson Bennett learning from. For my honorable mention, just because he's fun, and let me be perfectly clear, as Joe would always tell you on a sleeper with this team specifically, you're not drafting Puka Nacua, but keep an eye on him. He has a fun skill set. As we've talked about, there's nobody else, and they handpicked him. I'm very interested to see what he could be in this offense as a gadget player. The comps are there. The comps are mildly ridiculous, but the comps are there to Deebo Samuel, and Sean McVay knows how the 49ers utilize Deebo Samuel, and they need somebody else to touch the football. And this is one of the first teams that really utilized their wide receivers in the running game the way they used Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods when he was healthy.
My only argument is that they also handpicked Tutu Atwell.
That's true.
Early, like way earlier.
Way earlier than anybody wanted it to be.
So early. All right. I'm sorry.
I am interested to see how Cam Akers continues, because he had a really good stretch the last 6 weeks of the season, averaging 4.9 yards per carry, leading the NFL in rushing yards. Obviously, we know what happened midseason with all the trade turmoil, wanting to go and then sitting out 2 games and then coming back after they moved on from Darrell Henderson. They did spend a 6th-round pick on Zach Evans out of Ole Miss. Kyron Williams,
4th-round pick,
really
I think,
anything
last year.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even really make a huge dent this past year. So,
and he's more of a pass catcher. He's not going to take Cam Akers' job away from him. So.
Yeah, he's not going to take the early down role. And that's really the big thing, is how many targets is Cam Akers going to see? Because we do fully expect him to see plenty of rushing attempts. And those rushing attempts will turn into yards and touchdown upside.
Conflicting articles coming out on Football Guys this week. I wrote an article last Friday about Cam Akers being an overvalued player, and someone far smarter than me, Jason Wood, wrote about him being an undervalued player. So opinions differ. The crux of my argument is, for 12 weeks, Cam Akers was useless for fantasy managers. He scored 1 touchdown and caught 2 passes in those games in the midst of threatening to leave or be kicked off the team. Obviously, shit turned around like crazy, but it turned around when the Rams had nobody else to lean on. And my concern with Akers is, with his current ADP, he's basically going as an RB2. You should be starting him every week, and I'm not convinced that you can start Cam Akers every week, Josh.
So while I make this point, Ryan, pull up the ADP. Let's queue up another round of Would You Rather. Okay. But the one thing that I preached for when I talked about this team going out and getting Mike LaFleur to be their offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur called a lot of zone gap run plays. Sean McVay leaned very heavily on the gap scheme last year. When you look at the success of runs for Cam Akers, that came in the zone gaps or the zone rushing scheme, which better fits what Mike LaFleur brings to the table. So I think from a rushing perspective, this will ultimately benefit Cam Akers. But again, it still boils down to, how many targets do we realistically see him getting? We know he can catch the football. It's just, do they want to throw him the football and make him a 300-plus touch running back?
Well, those other 20% of targets that aren't going to Cooper Kupp need to go somewhere.
Exactly.
No, Josh, it's a really good point with the Would You Rather game, because there are some very interesting names. So I'm just going to start with the 3 going ahead of him, but then there's a few names behind him I want to ask you guys about. I think we could go all the way to 5 deep, so it's a hell of a way to end the show. We're going to start with just 3 spots ahead of him. He is going off as RB19 to Cam Akers, RB22. Joe Mixon or Cam Akers? Linda.
I'm going to start with me. I'm not taking Joe Mixon.
That's fair. And there's a lot of folks who feel that way.
I am taking Chase Brown for what it's worth. Late in drafts, especially in best ball drafts. I like that dart throw just fine.
Okay. I would take Joe Mixon in this situation. Joe Mixon is on my undervalued team. Cam Akers is on my overvalued. I've written about it. Josh?
Yeah, I mean, from an offensive perspective, there's definitely a lot to like about Joe Mixon's situation, but you want to talk about horrible efficiency. I would much rather take Akers and just bank on better upside because he showed efficiency last year to end the season.
Speaking of efficiency last year, RB20 just 5 picks ahead of Cam Akers. Miles Sanders or Cam Akers? Josh, I'm going to start with you.
I'm running with Sanders.
I thought you might
this year. I'm big on Sanders this year. I love him in that offense, and they need somebody to lean on. And for all we've talked about with Cam Akers being that potential guy here, there's still a Cooper Kupp in this offense. There's nothing in that Carolina offense except Miles Sanders. So give me Miles Sanders.
Linda?
I am really glad you finally said what team you went to because I could not remember. I was like, shit. Yeah, I think I probably Sanders. Like I said, that offense is pretty depleted. Besides my boy Chuba.
It's not even close for me. It's Sanders. However, this next one is interesting because they were both my overvalued running backs. Baltimore's J.K. Dobbins or Cam Akers. Linda, I'm going to let you go first.
Give me Cam Akers.
Josh?
I'm taking Dobbins here. I want, but just about any running back that has a running based quarterback, give me those running backs at that point, because Dobbins already is a high efficiency runner. He averaged over 5 yards a carry when he finally started to, blow through all the scar tissue and all that stuff. He was running last year, and I'm all in on Dobbins this year, especially at his price.
This might be the only one Cam Akers was going to win for me. So I'll give you Cam Akers here. There are a few names going afterward. I could list the rest of these, but we'll be here all night. I have to ask this next one because it's insane to me. He's going 8 picks later. Or no, I apologize. I'm looking at 2 different running backs here. DeAndre Swift is the next running back. How do we feel about Swift in Philly, Linda? Are we taking Swift over Cam Akers?
I like how you slipped in the team name right at the beginning to make sure I
got you,
ready.
girl.
But I did start paying attention after the draft. I like Swift in Philly. I like Swift out of Philly. I've always been a DeAndre Swift fan. I think kind of butted heads with that running back coach in Detroit. And so, that'll happen. You don't mesh well with everybody. It's okay to not like who you work with. But I like him in Philly. I think I'd probably go Swift.
Josh, are you sticking with your give me the rushing quarterback running back?
I would if Swift actually was the RB1. But I don't think he is. I really don't. As long as Rashad Penny is healthy, I think he will be the first down.
Oh my God.
I truly do.
Not again, Rashad Penny, dude.
Look, they both miss games. It is what it is at this point. And I brought this up on Aaron St. Dennis's podcast when we recorded about the Eagles a few weeks back that just came out today. DeAndre Swift makes his money with targets. Jalen Hurts doesn't throw to running backs.
Yeah.
So unless they plan on using DeAndre Swift as essentially the starting slot wide receiver, I think he's being vastly overdrafted in fantasy. So for that reason alone, give me
even as a 5th and 6th round pick. You think that's overdrafted?
Vastly.
All right, guys. The last 2 I want to throw out are both interesting to me because they are going 2 full rounds later. I'm going to start with David Montgomery moving to Detroit and taking over that coveted Jamal Williams role. Obviously, they also brought in Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh.
I mean, you could make the argument that Monty and Cam Akers are basically the same back, except Monty has more upside as a pass catcher. So give me Montgomery.
And fully intact Achilles tendons.
Yeah. I like Monty. I like both running backs in Detroit quite a bit this year.
All right. Well, then it's Monty for me as well. The last one we've already talked about, and we're all kind of on the fence. But 2 rounds later, Cam Akers or Denver's Javonte Williams.
Don't go to me first.
Josh.
I'm going to take Cam Akers. Like I said, I statted out Williams for 209 carries, and I wanted to vomit. Like, I don't think he sees – honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he only gets half of that.
I have to pay more attention to the mock drafts. I was shocked that Javonte Williams' ADP is the 7th round right now. That feels really late for someone who was as hyped up as he was last year. I'm a Javonte Williams guy. If I have injury risk on 2 running backs, I'm going to take the one I don't hate, and I happen to love one of these guys. So give me Javonte Williams for sure. Linda, bring it home. Who you taking?
Yeah, I think I'm Javonte Williams on that too. In the 7th round, with the upside that we've seen him produce, should he come back healthy, then you're getting him at a incredible discount. So
there we go.
That's fine with me.
All right, let's close out the show with the last couple of questions. Linda, who is the Rams kicker, and does it matter?
I think it does matter for what it's worth. I think the Rams kickers mattered the year before. I mean,
when it was Matt Gay, it certainly mattered. It's just I don't even know who they brought in at this point.
So they brought in NC State's Christopher Dunn as an undrafted free agent and Oklahoma State's Tanner Brown as an undrafted free agent. Christopher Dunn was the Lou Groza Award winner, didn't get drafted. Short. I think he's like 5'10", which is a concern. Most of the kickers are clearing 6 foot. And he also didn't handle kickoffs at all, which is NFL. It's I think it's much more important than people give credit to it for.
Is this where you were researching the touchback rates, Linda?
Yeah, well, I had to see who. Yeah. So Tanner Brown handled touchbacks in 2021, but in 2022 he only did 4 games. So I don't know what happened. We knew he was grad. They may have just been trying to get somebody else used to that position. I know it was a true freshman, but Christopher Dunn hasn't done it at all. And so I'll be interested to see if that's an issue. They both have longs of over 50 yards, but I think it's going to be a true camp battle, which is fun for me. I like to watch that go down, but I like it especially a lot more when there's an Oklahoma State kicker back there.
I was going to say, you get a camp battle and an OK State kicker in the battle. This couldn't be any better. Linda is a Rams fan for at least the next 3 months.
Built for me. Plus, a quarterback coach is an Oklahoma State quarterback. I mean, I really do have some ties to the Rams. They're a little bit a part of me.
Hey, they're NFC. They're on the opposite side of the Broncos. You can root for a Rams-Broncos Super Bowl. I love it. Joe Sleeper, Van Jefferson, because who else is it going to be? I know Linda has already said it wouldn't be Van Jefferson. It shouldn't be Van Jefferson. So I am upset that Joe's not on the show because that could have been a great fight to end the show. And his IDP is the GOAT, Aaron Donald. Again, I knew who it was going to be before I ever opened the show sheet because who else is it going to be on this defense? That's it, guys. We got to the end of the show. First and foremost, Linda, always a pleasure to speak with you. What a wonderful show. Please remind people where they can find your work and if you're working on anything right now.
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Lindellians. Right now, I'm just being really annoying in the off season, but as camps start to ramp up, it'll be more football related and less me just talking.
No, because your Twitter feed should always be you just talking because it's easily the best stuff that's on Twitter any month of the year.
I was about to say the jabs, the strays you're throwing at Pop-Tarts right now. I'm all about it.
I like the Cheez-It Bowl, bro.
Cross the whole thing, man.
I ate a bowl of Cheez-Its in solidarity with the Cheez-It Bowl today.
Hey, I bought Cheez-Its this weekend. I was trying to support them too.
That's fantastic.
Guys, the Look Inside series is in full swing. Not only do we do it in show form, but we do it in article form as well. We just dropped write-ups on Jonathan Taylor on Monday and Tim Patrick today. We have a big one coming on Cooper Kupp on Friday. I don't know what Chris really needs to write in the Cooper Kupp article other than he's Cooper fucking Kupp. Except Chris did let me in that he thinks he's still the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. So he's going to have a compelling argument dropping this Friday on Cooper Kupp being the wide receiver 1 in all of fantasy. And we're going to have those previews coming every single week, 3 previews a week, along with the 3 teams we cover on the show. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. We have shows all week long on top of this live show every single Wednesday. We have my mock draft show, Mock It Like It's Hot, that I almost introed you guys for. That's every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Very special guest this week. You want to tune in this week. Every other Tuesday, we have Her Story in the Making, hosted by Britt Flynn. That's also available in the Better Sports Network. If you want to support Club Fantasy, make sure you download the Better Sports app as well. She just had an amazing guest. Lisa Ann was on the show this week. It was one of our most popular Her Story in the Making episodes. You should definitely check that out. Also on Tuesdays, Who's Your Caddy? That is our DFS golf show hosted by Kelly and Adam. All they really do is make you money. If you are against making money, don't watch that show. But if you are for it, make sure you download FanDuel or DraftKings and play that DFS golf. They're going to help you out with that. And every Sunday, we have our new Dynasty show, Dynasty After Party. It comes on Sunday at 9:30. They're covering us lots of stuff. Now, Josh, I noticed it this week. Is their plan to follow along with us on a look inside? Because I noticed that's what they were doing a lot this week. So,
yep, that's going to be the plan. Kind of follow along and kind of give their dynamic takes on players with the teams that we're kind of covering with our Look Inside series every week.
Perfect. And that's definitely Joel and Michael Sicoli every week. And occasionally they're going to have a guest host on there. He just hasn't been able to be on there very much, Andrew Elmquist, but we'll have him back on eventually. Guys, that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will be back next week. I've already told you all the shows. Make sure you're following Club Fantasy on Twitter, and make sure you follow us on all the other social medias at Club Fantasy FFL. We appreciate you. For Josh, for Linda, I am your host, Ryan. Have a wonderful night. Always remember that defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We will see you next Wednesday.